Hey everyone, this video introduces us to the economics of poverty and inequality. We will start with some definitions. Yeah, good. Equality and equity, they're similar, and these ones get confused with each other a bit. So equality means being the same, and in this course we talk about income and wealth equality. Equity is about being fair or just. If we had income equality, the surgeon and the cleaner would both earn the same income. They're equal. If we have equity in income, the surgeon probably gets paid more than the cleaner due to their qualifications and arguably their contributions to society. Okay, have a think about this question. Do we want income equality? I'm going to be interested in what you write here. There is a widespread view in the world that there is too much inequality and that we should strive for more equality. And this is what a lot of our analysis in this course will focus on. However, equality is not actually advocated for. A degree of inequality is actually great because it gives people like the surgeon the incentive to work hard because they're going to get rewarded. What we as a society struggle with is what degree of inequality is acceptable and what's the best way to get to that Goldilocks level. So this is a lot of what politicians argue about. How do we get there? And what is the level? Another distinction we need to make is between income equality and wealth inequality. Essentially, income is what you receive and wealth is what you own. Generally, the distribution of wealth is much more unequal than the distribution of income, and we'll look into that a little bit further. But first, we will look at how we measure inequality. So we start with quintiles, where we split the population of a country into fifths according to their income. So here we've got the poorest fifth of the population, and we see how much of the total income of the country they earn. They earn 5% of the total income. The second poorest, 20%, receive 10% of the income. The third poorest, the middle fifth, is 15%. Second richest, 25%, and the richest 25% in Burmistan get 45% of the total income. This gives us a reasonable idea of the degree of inequality that exists, but it can get clearer. So we are going to look at the Lorenz curve. It was invented by this guy, Max Lorenz, and this shows the information from the quintiles graphically. Our axes are labeled as so. Make sure you know these. Easily forgotten. It's usually the hardest part for students of drawing this diagram is remembering the labels here. So cumulative percentage of income on the y-axis and cumulative percentage of population on the x-axis. The diagonal line represents perfect equality, but we call it the line of perfect equality, but it's perfect in that it's exactly equal rather than the perfect outcome, the desired outcome. It's not the desired outcome as we mentioned. Now, that would be communism. We don't want that really. That's not going to work too well. Now we're going to plot the curve. Only HL students are going to be asked to plot the Lorenz curve from this data, the quintile data that we've got here. But I'm showing everyone because to understand it is really to be able to plot it. So here's how it works. We plot the cumulative points on the diagram. Starting with the poorest 20%, they make 5% of the income. So 20%, 5% of the income. Then we plot the poorest 40%. So that would be 5 plus 10, so 15%. So we can see how it's a bit cumulative here. That's why we cumulative percentage of population, cumulative percentage of income. So you just follow this and connect the dots. And of course, the Lorenz curve, we connect the dots with the curve. We know that the Lorenz curve will connect at each end of the line of perfect equality because the poorest 0% are going to earn 0% of the total income, and the richest 100% are going to earn 100% of the income. So when looking at the Lorenz curve, we want to know how to interpret that. So what does this actually mean? Here's where we get a little bit fruity. So think of the area between the Lorenz curve and the line of perfect equality as being a banana. You can sort of see the shape there. Uh, Everyone likes big bananas. So the bigger your banana, the more money you make. This means that there's less money for others, so income is not distributed as equally. So what I'm getting at here, the further the Lorenz curve is away from the line of perfect equality, the bigger the banana, the more unequal is the income. Okay, that's how we show it diagrammatically. We can also show it numerically. So we use the Gini coefficient, which was invented by this guy, Corrado Gini. Now, we need to know how the Gini coefficient is calculated, with the formula, but we won't actually do the calculations. The calculations are actually really hard. So what we do is it's the area between the diagonal, that line of perfect equality, and the Lorenz curve divided by the entire area under the diagonal. Okay, and that gets a Gini coefficient. It's always between 0 and 1, 0 being perfectly equal and 1 being perfectly unequal, so one person owning everything, getting all the income. The higher the number, the higher the degree of inequality. So we can see at a glance how equal or unequal a country is in terms of income equality, income distribution, I should say. Here we can really see how we label this. So that equation on the last page might not be 100% clear for people. So we can just say it's A divided by A plus B. If you refer back to that equation, that will help you out a little bit there. Now, we are going to look at the causes of inequality. Why do we get so much inequality? There are many causes. A lot of them are interrelated. So firstly, we're going to look at the inequality of opportunity. This is really about the circumstances of your birth. Did you grow up in a wealthy family or a poor family? With loving parents or with less loving parents, bad parents? All of these factors influence your future earnings and wealth. And while, yes, you can overcome these hurdles, you have to be that much better, work that much harder, maybe be that much luckier just to reach the same position as someone who was born into advantage. The way in which you can grow up can also affect the level of human capital you possess. So this is really your health and education. It's not hard to see how being raised with more advantage can help you be healthier and with greater access to education, therefore more valuable skills. Over time, these differences can manifest into different levels of resource ownership, specifically capital. So in recent years, average profits and share prices, they've risen at a much faster rate than wages. So even really quite recently, like this century. As lower income earners, they're going to hold fewer shares. They don't have the disposable income to put into shares. So that means there's been an increased concentration of wealth among the rich part of society. Circumstances of your birth also matter in terms of discrimination. There are countless cases of people being discriminated against due to their gender, race, religion, sexuality, and even their socioeconomic status. They might just not get the same opportunities because of how they're different from people deciding who get those opportunities. Or they might get the opportunity, but they might get paid less due to their difference, and they might feel they've got less bargaining power. So we've all heard of the gender wage gap or the gender pay gap. These gaps also exist in much less publicized, but in terms of race as well, that can exist. Another cause is the government's tax and benefits policies. Most countries have what we call progressive taxes, which we'll be learning about in class, whereas your income increases, you get taxed more. However, what we've seen is a trend where the top tax rate has fallen in many countries over years. So we look back to 1981 in Australia, our top tax rate was 60%. A few years before that, it was even higher. And whereas now, 40 years later, the top tax rate is 45%. Also, capital gains tend to be taxed at a lower rate. For example, if you sell shares for a profit of $100,000, you'll get taxed less than you would if you earned an extra $100,000 through wages. Those with higher incomes are more likely to benefit from this. We've also seen austerity policies. We learned a little bit about that, which reduce government spending. So these cuts often come in areas like education and healthcare. These areas are needed much more by those of lower incomes because they don't have the means to provide these for themselves in the private free market. So these policies can really affect how much access people have to higher incomes later in life. And related to government policies is the idea that those with higher incomes have more status and power. So they can use their status and power to influence politicians. Many politicians rely on donations to fund their election campaigns. So someone's got to fund all the posters and media coverage that they get. So this can mean once they've received these donations from powerful people and corporations, it means that they're going to be more likely to support policies that support their wealthy donors. So this might mean tax cuts, might mean deregulation, which make it easier to make profits. Technological change has eliminated jobs. So in areas such as manufacturing, repetitive work can be done more efficiently by machines. So wages of low-skilled workers are therefore not rising as much. There's less demand for them, so it's going to keep the wages low. And the technologies are also at the same time creating need for higher skilled jobs, which increases the differences between the incomes of the high skilled and the low skilled. Related to that, globalization is related in that it's led to companies outsourcing their lower skilled work to less developed countries where wages are lower. This, of course, leads to less domestic demand for those lower skilled jobs, leading to either unemployment or continually low wages for low skilled workers. So we're going to have a bit of a closer look at some of these causes of inequality, and we're going to get into some of the ways that that governments especially can reduce the inequality. Okay, I'll see you in class.